The morning Marcus dropped his son off at school, a woman in a white SUV rolled down her window and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "That man looks like he slept in his car again." She laughed. Her friend in the passenger seat laughed too. Marcus didn't respond. He just straightened his jacket, kissed his 7-year-old son on the top of his head, and watched him run through the school gates. Then he walked back to his car, a dented, 10-year-old Honda that needed a new muffler, and drove to work. He had learned a long time ago that defending yourself to people who have already decided who you are is mostly a waste of breath. So he didn't. He just kept moving. But his son, Caleb, had heard every word. Caleb stood at the school gate and watched his father's car disappear down the road. His small hands curled into fists at his sides. He didn't say anything either. Not yet. But something had settled in that boy's chest, quiet and certain and patient, like a stone dropped into still water, waiting to reach the bottom. It would reach it. Soon enough. Marcus Webb was 34 years old and had been raising Caleb alone since the boy was 2. His wife, Diane, had passed away from an illness that moved too fast for any of them to fully understand before it was over. One year she was there, laughing in the kitchen, singing off-key in the car, making plans, and then she wasn't. Marcus had held his world together with both hands after that. He had kept working. Kept the apartment. Kept showing up for Caleb every single morning, no matter how empty he felt some nights. He worked 2 jobs. During the day, he was a janitor at a local office building. In the evenings, 3 nights a week, he drove for a delivery service. He didn't love either job. But they paid the bills, kept food on the table, and allowed him to drop Caleb off at school every morning himself, which mattered more to him than he could explain. He was always tired. His clothes were clean but worn. His car made sounds it shouldn't. He carried a quietness about him that some people mistook for slowness or defeat. He wasn't defeated. He was just carrying a lot, and doing it without making a show of it. That was simply who Marcus was. The school where Caleb attended was in a neighborhood that was changing fast. New families had moved in over the past few years, families with newer cars, bigger houses, and a certain confidence that came from never having had to count coins before a grocery run. Most of them were perfectly decent people. But some of them had a way of looking at Marcus that made him feel like he was standing in the wrong place. There was a group of parents, mostly mothers, who gathered near the school gate every morning. They talked about renovations, weekend trips, and other things Marcus had no room for in his life. They were polite to him in the thin, careful way people are polite to someone they've already sorted and filed away. One woman named Patricia led the group in the way a certain kind of person always finds themselves leading, loudly, and without being asked. She was the one who had said things in the past. Small comments. The kind that had just enough plausible deniability to never quite be called cruel. "Is that the same shirt from Tuesday?" she had said once, within earshot of 3 other parents. Another time, "I feel so bad for that little boy. Growing up like that." Marcus had heard all of it. He had never responded. He had kept his eyes ahead and his chin level and gone about his day. But Caleb heard it too. Every single time. One Thursday afternoon, Caleb's teacher, a kind woman named Mrs. Ellison, assigned the class a project. "I want each of you to write about your hero," she said. "Not a superhero from a movie. A real person in your life. Someone who inspires you. Tell me who they are and why." The children chattered excitedly. Most of them talked about athletes or grandparents or older siblings. Caleb said nothing. He just opened his notebook and started writing. He wrote for the entire work period without stopping. Mrs. Ellison noticed, but didn't interrupt him. There was something focused and almost fierce about the way he was writing, like he had been waiting for exactly this assignment. That evening at home, Marcus made pasta, the simple kind with butter and a little garlic, because it was a Thursday and Thursdays were always tight before Friday's paycheck. Caleb sat at the kitchen table doing his homework while Marcus stood at the stove. "Dad," Caleb said. "Yeah, bud. Do you know you're my hero?" Marcus turned from the stove. Caleb was looking at him with those steady brown eyes, Diane's eyes, exactly, and his expression was completely serious. Marcus felt something move in his chest. He turned back to the pasta so Caleb wouldn't see his face. "That's a big thing to say," Marcus managed. "I know," said Caleb. "I mean it." The next morning was a Friday. Marcus and Caleb walked from the car to the school gate together. It was a cool morning, the sky pale and wide. Caleb held his backpack straps with both hands the way he always did. Patricia was there with her group, coffees in hand, talking. She glanced over as Marcus and Caleb approached. "Morning," Marcus said, the way he always did, quietly, politely, without expecting much back. Patricia looked at his jacket, the same dark jacket he wore most mornings, and then looked away, saying something low to the woman beside her. The woman covered a smile. Marcus didn't look. He crouched down to Caleb's level. "Have a good day," he said. "I'll be here at 3. "I know," Caleb said. He hugged his father, a real hug, both arms, tight, and then looked up at him. "I love you, Dad." "Love you too, bud. Go on." Caleb ran through the gate. Marcus stood up. Patricia and her group had moved slightly but were still close. He could feel the sideways energy of people pretending not to look while looking. He walked back to his car, started the engine, which rattled a little before settling, and drove to work. He cleaned floors that morning. He thought about Caleb's hug. He thought about pasta and Thursday evenings. He thought about how a small life, held carefully, can still hold a great deal of love. Mrs. Ellison chose 6 students to read their hero essays aloud to the class the following Monday. Caleb was one of them. He stood at the front of the classroom with his notebook open, his small shoulders squared, and read clearly and without rushing. He wrote about a man who woke up before sunrise every morning. Who packed a school lunch the night before because mornings were busy. Who worked all day cleaning other people's offices and then drove across the city 3 nights a week delivering packages so that his son could have what he needed. Who never complained. Who always showed up. Who made pasta on Thursdays and let Caleb pick the movie on Friday nights even when he was so tired his eyes were closing before the opening credits finished. He wrote about a man who had lost the person he loved most and had not fallen apart, not because he was made of stone, but because he had a son who needed him to stay standing. "My dad doesn't have a big job or a fancy car," Caleb read, his voice steady. "Some people look at him like he's nothing. But they don't know what I know. My dad is the strongest person I've ever seen. Not because he never cried. But because he always came back. Every single morning, he came back." The classroom was very quiet. Mrs. Ellison was not bothering to hide the fact that her eyes were wet. Mrs. Ellison did something that week that she would later say was the most meaningful thing she had done in 11 years of teaching. She asked Caleb's permission. Then she typed up the essay, word for word, exactly as Caleb had written it, and she submitted it to the district's annual Family Stories competition. It was a small competition, not widely known, that collected real stories from students about people in their lives. Caleb's essay won first place in his age group. The district published it in their community newsletter, a small publication that went out to several thousand homes and businesses in the area. Local community boards. School notice boards. Some neighbors got it in their mailboxes. Others saw it shared online by a school board member who had found it moving. Marcus did not know any of this was happening. He was working. He was always working. It was Patricia who saw it first. She was reading the newsletter over her morning coffee on a Saturday when she reached the winning student essay section. She saw the school name. She saw the grade. She started reading. By the third paragraph, she had set her coffee down. By the end, she was sitting completely still at her kitchen table, the newsletter in both hands, reading a description of a man she had dismissed and mocked for 2 years, and understanding, with a clarity that was deeply uncomfortable, exactly what she had done. The following Monday morning at the school gate was different. Marcus arrived as usual, Caleb beside him, backpack on, holding his straps. The group of parents was there. Patricia was among them. When Marcus said, "Morning," and started to turn away, Patricia stepped forward. "Marcus," she said. He stopped. He turned. Her voice had been different, no lightness in it, no performance. She looked directly at him. Her face was doing something it didn't usually do, which was simply being honest. "I read the newsletter," she said. "I read your son's essay." Marcus said nothing. He waited. "I owe you an apology." She said it plainly. "No decoration. I've said things. I've been unkind. I didn't know your story, but that's not really an excuse, is it? I shouldn't have needed to know your story to treat you with basic respect." The other parents nearby had gone quiet. Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he looked down at Caleb, who was watching with those calm, steady eyes. "Thank you for saying that," Marcus said. He meant it. No sharpness in his voice. No victory either. Just a man receiving something real and responding to it honestly. Patricia nodded. She seemed smaller somehow. Not diminished, just more real. Caleb looked up at his father and slipped his hand into his. Marcus squeezed it once. Then he crouched down. "Go on, Bud," he said softly. "Have a good day." That evening, Marcus finally read the essay. Mrs. Ellison had sent a copy home with Caleb in a sealed envelope with a note that read, "You should be so proud. I mean that sincerely." Marcus sat at the kitchen table after Caleb had gone to bed. The apartment was quiet. The pasta pot was soaking in the sink. A lamp in the corner made the room feel warm and small and safe. He opened the envelope and read his son's words. He read them slowly. He read some parts twice. When he finished, he folded the paper carefully along its original creases and held it in both hands for a moment. Then he put his face in his hands and cried, the kind of crying that has been waiting a long time for permission, the kind that doesn't feel like weakness when it finally comes but like something loosening that needed to loosen. He cried for Diane. He cried every morning. He cried for every comment he had absorbed and carried without putting down. He cried because his 7-year-old son had seen him, truly seen him, and had written it down in his own careful handwriting and called it heroism. After a while, he was quiet. He got up, checked on Caleb, fast asleep, one arm around a stuffed dog he'd had since he was a baby, and went back to the kitchen. He made himself a cup of tea. He sat back down. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something that was not quite happiness but was close to it. Something solid. Something true. Things didn't change all at once. Life doesn't work that way. Marcus still drove the dented Honda. He still worked 2 jobs. Thursdays were still tight. The apartment was still small. But something had shifted in the air around him, quietly, without announcement. The parents at the school gate were different with him. Not dramatically, but in the small ways that actually matter. A real good morning instead of a performed one. A genuine question about how his week was going. Patricia, once or twice, had saved him a spot near the gate when the path was crowded, and nodded at him in a way that carried no distance in it. Caleb noticed all of it. Kids always notice. One Friday evening, they were on the sofa. Caleb had picked the movie, as always, and about 20 minutes in, Caleb looked over at his father. "Dad," he said. "Yeah, Bud. Are you happy?" Marcus considered the question the way he considered everything, carefully and honestly. "Yeah," he said. "I am." Caleb seemed satisfied with that. He turned back to the movie, pulled the blanket up, and leaned against his father's arm. Marcus looked at the top of his son's head. At the small familiar weight of him against his side. He thought about what Caleb had written. About coming back every morning. About staying standing not because it was easy but because someone needed you to. He understood now, fully, that the same was true in reverse. Caleb had shown up for him too. In the most important way a child can show up for a parent, by seeing them clearly, and saying so out loud. That was everything. That was more than enough.